A town square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
He is hit! He stumbles! He's down!
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
Oh, what a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Tuesday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig, hanging out with you guys here in the Matt Black Kia Studios. Wow, it's been an interesting day in sports, interesting week, and it's only Tuesday. Nice to see the Sixers get a win last night. I'm still digesting what on earth happened in the Monday Night Football game last night because I'm trying to debate, was that really good defense or was that bad offense? And then Brian Kelly leaves Notre Dame and goes to LSU, which got my head spinning as well. So we got a lot to get to here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll talk some state of the NFL, state of the NBA coming up at 6:20 tonight with Julian Edlow from DraftKings right here on 97.3 ESPN. Also, you can join the conversation over on the text board at 609-403-0973. You could DM the show through 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live as always on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN. So, couple things we got to digest here. And I got to start with the thing that Mike Gill and I talked about at the top of the Sports Bash 4 hours ago. And I'm going to bring it back to you guys because I know not everyone's listening now who's listening earlier in the day. So just to kind of give you a picture of what happened that you didn't hear the story earlier. So I'm at home last night and I'm getting ready to actually fall asleep. And anybody who's been up late watching television like I am knows that you got SVP Sports Center after Monday Football, and then you have NFL Rewind. NFL Rewind is basically their run it back of all the NFL action from Sunday. Then they had the Eagles highlight. And the conversation they had after the Eagles highlights last night, wow. If you didn't see the story at 97.3 ESPN.com or the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, here is what was said. Now, we have more details on the conversation over at 97.3 ESPN.com, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. But longtime NFL insider Chris Mortensen apparently thought that yesterday was the day, Monday, November 29th was the day that he wanted to set the record straight on the Jalen Reagor topic. That guy, Jalen Reagor, that we have had to hear so much about for the longest time now, about who drafted him, why did the Eagles draft him? Well, this is what Chris Mortensen said last night on NFL Rewind on ESPN television.
What people miss also is number 18, Jalen Reagor. He was the guy that the Eagles took ahead of Justin Jefferson last year in the NFL draft. And listen, as the story goes, and nobody's denied it, it was Doug Peterson, and I like Doug, the former Eagles head coach, and Howie Roseman, GM, who decided they wanted Reagor over what their personnel draft board said, which was Justin Jefferson. And so they took Jalen Reagor. He's a bust. But when you put him on the field, and they continue to put him on the field, you basically take away Devontae Smith because they're not going to target a certain player. So the answer is, don't have him on the field in those situations because he's not going to catch the ball.
All right, there's a lot to break down from that. And there was more said on the show that we'll try to get to at some point here tonight. But when Mortensen dropped that nugget, that, first of all, this story, this report has not been disputed or refuted by anybody. That was almost like his way, I felt like, of saying, listen, everybody, this is the story, and we're putting this to bed. Now, of course, Eagle fans won't put this to bed because at the end of the day, the Jalen Reagor drafting will be forever among the infamous moments in Eagles and Philadelphia sports history. But when he said that Doug Peterson and Howie Roseman wanted to draft Reagor instead of following the draft board, there's a lot of questions I got with that. Number one, why was Doug Peterson so intent on this? Now, it's been talked about that Peterson was hoping to use Reagor in the Eagles offense like Tyreek Hill was used in Andy Reid's offense. The problem is we never saw that happen. Doug Peterson's offense never looked anything like the Kansas City offense. Never. So how am I supposed to think that Doug Peterson knew what he was doing when it came to the pick? And then they said that Peterson and Roseman together went against their draft board. The draft board is made by a guy named Andy Weidel. He is the vice president of Eagles player personnel. And he has now been either a high-level scout or involved in player personnel decisions for 2 different Super Bowl winning championship teams. And they told that guy, no, we're going with this guy. So that means there were 2 draft picks in the 2020 NFL draft that we have bona fide reporting on that Doug Peterson specifically said, I want that guy. It was Jalen Reagor and Jalen Hurts. Apparently, both Doug and Howie were on board with getting them. Now, the Hurts in the second round pick is not that big a deal to me because quarterbacks get picked in the second and third round every year. It's not that big a deal. The problem with the Reagor pick is that it was right ahead of Justin Jefferson. The Vikings, it looks like, didn't just get the better player, but the player that made the more sense and is being utilized better. Because it's one thing to get the better player. It's another thing if the Eagles utilized Reagor properly. Then you heard Mortensen say in the piece that Jalen Hurts or that Jalen Reagor is a bust. Now, hold on. This is a guy who's covered the league for decades. He's one of the best in the business. He doesn't just say stuff for Chris Mortensen is not a clickbait guy. So for him to say that Reagor is a bust and he shouldn't be on the field runs directly contrary to what Nick Sirianni said the day before. Because Nick Sirianni said at his Monday press conference that the Eagles, and I'm going to read the quote. This is a quote from Nick Sirianni. I have not thought about benching Jalen Reagor and not thought through that because I don't think it's in the best interest of the team because I think Jalen Reagor gives us the best chance to win. That's a problem too. Because now you have the previous head coach wanted Jalen Reagor, and the current head coach says that he gives us the best chance to win. The same guy who dropped 2 balls, one of them went off his face mask because he closed his eyes when he went for the catch. If that guy gives you the best chance to win, then somebody failed somewhere along the way in building this roster. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, live in the Matt Black Kia studios. Of course, you can chime into the show at 609-403-0973. You can DM the show to 97.3 ESPN mobile app. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. We are live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN. There really is a lot to digest here. And I understand for some of you out there, all you heard was Howie Roseman was involved in drafting Jalen Reagor. I understand that. Because some of you, no matter what happens, apparently you think Howie Roseman is the son of Satan or something ridiculous like that. Like he's evil incarnate or something. But the reality is that you have a huge problem that the head coach who won you a Super Bowl wanted Jalen Reagor. The GM, who is the hand-picked man to run the organization by the owner, Jeffrey Lurie, wanted Jalen Reagor. And the head coach, who the owner hand-picked after he fired the Super Bowl winning head coach, thinks the Eagles are a better team when Jalen Reagor's on the field. Jalen Reagor has played 68% of the Eagles' offensive snaps this year, compared to Greg Ward, who has only played 20.4% of the offensive snaps this season. You're telling me the Eagles would be that much worse if Ward maybe had, I don't know, a third of Reagor's snaps this year? Am I supposed to believe that Jalen Reagor is that important to this football team? Jalen Reagor this year is 58th out of 63 NFL wide receivers in catch rate. He is last in the NFL in yards per reception. He is second to last in yards per target. I don't care if Sirianni is supposed to give you coach speak or not throw a guy under the bus, because apparently Sirianni thinks it's okay to throw his quarterback under the bus the day before, which is the other thing that the guys on ESPN and NFL Rewind had an issue with. Two-time All-Pro center Jeff Saturday, who played with both Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers, by the way, went all in on Sirianni.
Nick Sirianni, rookie head coach, threw his quarterback under the bus.
Completely.
Completely.
Yeah. No, listen, that's a great point. And when you think about Sirianni and what he said about putting it on his quarterback, I don't like that, right? Like you target, I think Devontae Smith 4 times in the game, which I don't love already. But this offense, very similar to other offenses in the league, it is progression driven. So if you're thinking about Jalen Hurts, whichever receiver's coming over or the route's coming over, the ball has to be put on them. So to try to avoid a certain receiver, whether it's Reagor or trying to get it to Smith, that has to be designed from Sirianni, who's calling the plays. At this point, there's no mesh there. And they've been winning because of the run game they tried to put on Hurts. And again, he was inaccurate at the beginning, but you look at the end of the game, if you don't believe Reagor's the guy to make the plays, to your point, you got to sit him because that's where the progression's going.
It's a problem when your head coach is supposed to be the play caller, the creator of the offense, the guy who is setting everybody up to win and be successful, but he's not doing that job. And then he turns around and wants to throw the quarterback under the bus for something that's actually in part his fault. If Sirianni thinks the Eagles are a better football team with Jalen Reagor on the field, then why are you not using him properly? And if Sirianni thinks that Jalen Hurts should be doing better, then give us chapter and verse. How? I think there's something to be said with the fact that the Eagles had a very bad 24 hours from the beginning of that Giants game to thereafter, because it seems like between Reagor and Hurts and Sirianni, the 3 people that I pointed the finger at on Monday's show, also have the spotlight on them here on a Tuesday on 97.3 ESPN. All right, we'll dig deeper into the NFL, and we'll get a little NBA as well. Coming up outside with Julian Edlow from DraftKings right here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. But we are live on YouTube at 973 ESPN, and we'll get to your guys' thoughts and comments, text board, DMs to 973 ESPN mobile app on YouTube, and more as well this hour right here on Game Night. I'm Josh Hennig, hanging out with you until 7 o'clock tonight.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football, with the Eagles in North Jersey against the Jets.
The Philadelphia Eagles have now beaten the Jets 11 times and lost to them never.
Pre-game coverage begins this Sunday at noon. Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 1. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
It's game time. Football season is in full swing, and you can catch all the NFL action at the FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. It's time to get in on all the games you love. Experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet at FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's off the boardwalk, Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
We're going to need to fire up the plow. The big one.
Forecast is 6 feet of snow and 66 new.
Okay, well, what's my trade worth? You know what? I'm going to Matt Black Kia, where I can get some straight talk.
Put zero down. Pay zero interest for 60 months. We're talking real turkey. Bring us any trade, no matter if it's roasted or overdone. Stuck in a loan or lease? Matt Black Kia can get you released. We want to approve you today. Choose from the largest selection of certified pre-owned Kias at mattblackkia.com and drive away in a new Kia with zero down and zero interest for 60 months on every 2022 Kia Stinger, or make no payments until next year.
It's gotta be a Matt Black Kia.
Offers with approved Tier 1 and 2 through credit through Kia Motors Finance. Not all will qualify. 0% based on 1667 for 1,000 borrowed. Negative equity financing for new loan. Excludes taxes, title, license. Offers don't combine. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblack@nj.com for complete details. Expires 12/3/2021. Matt Black Kia 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
And now on Route 37 in Toms River. You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
We'll get into more talk here about a bunch of different stuff here because, I mean, this time of year, it feels like it's just a collision of sports all over the place. You've heard him talk with us in the past here on 97.3 ESPN about the NBA, but he's expanded his wings a little bit. He is DraftKings content specialist, the host of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. Julian Edlow joins us on the phone line right here on 97.3 ESPN. Julian, how you doing this Tuesday?
I'm doing well. How about you, Josh?
I'm doing pretty good. And before we get into anything specifically, I want to ask you, because you are the host of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. You know, I'm watching the Monday football game last night. And, you know, obviously, you know, we've seen how the college football season has played out. We see how the early NBA season has played out. And it seems like that some of the trends that we have, for lack of a better term, maybe predicted in the past, you know, like home team advantage in the NFL or early NBA season overs are a hot trend, or, you know, in college football, certain teams in certain situations should win versus not. It seems like a lot of trends that we have rode in the past have all been thrown out the window this year.
Some of them, yeah. I would say the two biggest ones, you know, home field advantage in the NFL, unless you are, you know, an elite home crowd. And Buffalo on Monday Night Football is going to be one. That'll be a tougher test for the Patriots on the road, for example. But for the most part, the NFL home field hasn't mattered. And it shows this week. We have, I think there's the Eagles came down to now under a touchdown favorite. They're 6.5. But there's 7 favorites of a touchdown or more if we count the Eagles at -7. I think 5 of them are on the road. That's unheard of in the NFL to have that many massive road favorites, and it hasn't mattered. They've been covering too, so that's kind of new. And then the early season NBA unders, the officiating has made a difference. Refs are swallowing the whistle. You got your guys like James Harden and Trae Young are your prime examples, but everybody in the league getting to the line a lot less, and books had to adjust their totals because NBA unders were smashing. They were up around 62% at one point this season.
Let's dig deeper into the NBA here, Julian. I know it's your bread and butter, and it's one of the things I love enjoy talking to you about because, you know, I'm watching the NBA, and obviously in this area, you know, we're focusing a lot on the Northeast, you know, Philadelphia, New York, Boston.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like the entire Eastern Conference, I don't think it's enough credit for how deep it is. I mean, I know everyone loves the Suns and the Warriors because they're 2 super hot teams right now, but it feels like the East is suddenly the best conference.
It's certainly deeper, and it feels like it may be better at this point. Now, the 2 best teams in the NBA right now, record-wise, are playing tonight. Huge game in Phoenix with the Suns and the Warriors. And, you know, it feels like the Warriors are back. The Warriors still have a plus 600 price tag to win it all on DraftKings Sportsbook. That feels like a pretty good price compared to years past. Like the year they had Durant and he tore his Achilles in the finals, they were minus 200 at stages of that season to win it all. You had to, you know, lay down 200 to win 100, and they didn't even get there. So getting them at 6-1 is pretty nice. But after, I mean, the Lakers are kind of falling apart. We'll see what the Suns can do after kind of choking in the NBA Finals and having that finals hangover. The East has a lot of good teams. The defending champs in the Bucks. The Nets, if they can stay healthy, and particularly if they can get Kyrie Irving on the floor at any point in time as a reinforcement there. Miami went out and got Kyle Lowry and has the odds-on favorite for 6-man and Tyler Hero. They're not healthy completely at the moment, but they have the bodies to compete. And then you have those teams that are always hopeful to win that have kind of gone in the wrong direction, but still solid teams like your 76ers, your Celtics. The Knicks have been making moves. It's a deep conference. I think, you know, I'm 34, so like at 34 years old, so the entire time growing up was always the West is better, the West is deeper. Like this is the first time in a long time that the Eastern Conference might have more better teams than the Western Conference.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to make you feel better, I'm only a few years older than you, so we're both in that same age range when it comes to watching sports here. You mentioned the Sixers. Let's get into that real quick. Obviously, now that Embiid is back, that changes the dynamic for them. Let's assume, for just argument's sake, that Ben Simmons doesn't play at all this year. He's never going to be in Philadelphia ever again. How do you gauge the Sixers long term then?
I gauge them really based on what you can build around Embiid. Like, Tobias Harris is a fine player. Steph Curry and Danny Green were nice additions when they kind of had the switch there to add some shooting. But that was to be, around a big part of that was Simmons. You have to make up for shooting around Simmons. He's going to be the ball handler. Maxi's a nice pick, but it's going to come down to what they can build around Embiid. And Embiid said it himself, the team's been building around Simmons and moving pieces to fit around Simmons, and it doesn't work. So you got to forget about what you can get for Simmons. The trade value is kind of out the window. You take what you can get and start over and build around Embiid, because had Embiid not gotten hurt last year, I think he would have been the MVP in the NBA. He has that type of ceiling that he can get to. So he obviously has health issues, but if I'm running the Philadelphia 76ers, the long-term goal is to make sure you have the pieces around Embiid to complement him to win for when he does have that healthy season that he can play, whatever it may be. He's always going to rest games, but play 70 games and be healthy for the postseason and be ready to go. You want to capture that type of lightning in a bottle.
There's a lot of speculation out there that, Embiid is, for lack of a better term, desperate to play as many games as possible, because he feels like the reason why he lost the MVP last year was because he missed the number of games that he did. What is your reaction to that kind of mentality that, Embiid is trying, he's playing through the hurt knee earlier this year, and he's trying to get back on these. Doc Rivers said he was working out when he wasn't supposed to, when he was recovering from COVID, that he's doing everything he can to be on the floor for as many games as possible this year.
Yeah, you like to see that from the player, but what's more important, a championship or an MVP for Joel Embiid? I don't think either of them are happening this year, but just in general, when you do get that season when he's healthy, you can win MVP playing 70 games or so. So I think that he needs to be okay kind of balancing the load management, and just even when he's not hurt. You don't want to play 82 games for somebody like him. I think he'll just burn out if the goal is to then play another 4 series in the NBA playoffs. So I like the effort from the player to be out there and be available for his team. But you got to find that balance of, hey, this is the season where we kind of have it. I've got to stay healthy. And, that's going to take some rebuilding. It's going to take some time to get those pieces around Embiid as well.
Of course, Embiid's only most games he ever played in the season is 64. So if he did play 70, that would also be an improvement as well. So there's that factor to keep in mind. Julian Edlow joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, at Julian Edlow on Twitter. He is the host of the Unreasonable Odds podcast, DraftKings content specialist. And of course, one of his expertise is the NBA. Joining us here to talk more basketball. Another team I know that you keep a very close eye on that is with the same record as Sixers right now is the Boston Celtics. And they got a new coach and they got a new guy running the front office, but it seems like this team that was supposed to be taking that next step has kind of regressed a bit. What is going on with the Celtics?
Yeah, they're a weird story this season. They did not get off to a hot start at all. And I put a lot of that on the coach. I don't think he did a good job with his rotations, his timeouts, a lot of things. But as you would expect, he's improved. He's gotten a little bit more comfortable there. And really the turning point in the season was the Marcus Smart calling out Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown for really just taking too many shots and not passing enough. And that kind of went over a certain way in the locker room. And since right after that, I think they won 9 of 11 or 9 of 13. They went on a pretty good run after that. Now they lost 2 in a row. They just had to bounce back in Toronto.
They've won 6 of the last 10. I know that much.
There you go. So before and they lost their last 2 prior to the win over Toronto. So they were on a little bit better of a run. They certainly slowed down recently, but this team is going to take a lot of time. They're I don't want to say they're in the same spot as the Sixers because they don't necessarily have a Ben Simmons situation, which is tougher to deal with, but they haven't reached the point that they've wanted to reach. And they have a guy in Jason Tatum that, like Embiid, has MVP potential if he does things the right way and has that type of season. That's his ceiling. So for me, I saw that team really take a step up when Jaylen Brown was off the floor with that injury, that hamstring injury, because things were running through Tatum and they didn't have to be co-stars and go back and forth and play one-on-one. It was just Tatum running the offense. And since Brown has been back, they lost a couple games. I don't think that's a coincidence. Now, things looked better against Toronto, and Jaylen Brown is certainly a talented player that I'm a fan of, but I think this team just needs to find its identity a little bit more. The pieces are there, but they need Tatum to take his game to an MVP level, find a way to work with Jaylen Brown, and they need to find a point guard because Marcus Smart is a dog. I do believe that what he does on defense helps spark that team, and he's a decent passer as well. But he's just never going to be that point guard that you want him to be. And they've been through guys. Kyrie didn't work out. Kemba didn't work out. They got to find that guy to play point guard.
Well, Kemba's on the bench for the Knicks right now, so maybe the Kemba thing was maybe there's a little more to that than anything else. He's just burned out at this point. But back to Tatum, I want to ask you because in this area, a lot of Sixer fans are like the Celtics stole the draft from us. They robbed us blind. All the Sixer fans are so mad at Danny Ainge still about that. They're mad at Colangelo because he was the GM back then. And look at Tatum, they said we could have had that guy. And my question to you is, in this area, Sixer fans look at Tatum like the guy we missed out on. What is the perspective on Tatum elsewhere in the league? Like, what do Boston fans think of Tatum? What do other fans around the league think of Tatum?
I mean, I think he's a pretty highly thought of player, both in terms of fans. I know, I don't have numbers in front of me. I know his jersey was pretty high up there the last couple of years. I think having the respect of guys like LeBron, who he works with, and, you'll see whatever after the Lakers and Celtics play, you'll see something from LeBron on social media talking about Jason Tatum, the relationship that Jason Tatum had working out with Kobe. I think all these things help build the perception. And he's a terrific scorer. He really is. He's a talented player. He's a decent passer. He had 10 assists the other night against Toronto when he shot like 2 of 16. So the talent's all there. I mean it when I say I think he has an MVP type of ceiling. He has that type of season in him, as he gets into his mid to late 20s. So like the Sixers with Embiid, the Celtics want to be ready to build around that. And the pieces around him haven't worked. Maybe it's just because Tatum isn't there yet. Generally, these NBA players, outside of, I guess, I don't know, like a Dwayne Wade with Shaq in his second or third year or whatever that was, winning it all.
Right.
It takes a little bit of time in the NBA. So when Tatum gets to that point, to be one of those elite wings, he's already kind of an elite wing, but, a top 3, top 5 wing in the NBA, you want to make sure you have the pieces around him to capitalize.
Yeah, it usually takes these guys like 7-8 years in the league before they start really, scratching the surface of their potential. And Tatum, in his 5th year, is only 23 years old, so people should keep that in mind. Another team in the Eastern Conference I want to ask you about is, the Bucks, because we mentioned they're the defending champs, but they get overlooked, it feels like, because you have Durant in New York, with Brooklyn, you have, the Ben Simmons stuff in Philadelphia. We talk about the Celtics stuff going on. It just seems like the Bucks are just kind of like, doing their thing in the background. Just they're like, all right, you guys want to overlook us. We're still here doing our thing. Yeah,
I mean, they got off to a pretty bad start to the season. I think that didn't help them, but they've bounced back a little bit. And I mean, the Eastern Conference standings are pretty wild. Like, we got to start going through who's a contender and who's a pretender, because you the Wizards have slowed down, but they're still up there in the 4 seed. Is that something that's going to hold? The Bulls are 2. Is that something that's going to hold? They seem like a good team. They're a playoff team for sure, but are they going to be the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference? You got the Bucks there at 5. Are they going to work their way up? The Hornets are in there at 6. They were a team, we thought we'd maybe see them in the play-in round again. The Cavaliers are, right there sandwiched in the standings with the 76ers, the Hawks who went to the Eastern Conference Finals, the Celtics. How far can they go? It's a weird conference this year. I think that the Bucks are certainly for real. They're a team that come playoff team will be in the mix. But like we talked about, the East is as good as it's ever been. So you can make a case, you look at the standings, you can make a case maybe the Nets, Heat, Bulls, maybe there's not necessarily a 4th team for the time being, but the Bucks could be a team that only goes to the 2nd round and still have a really good year if some of those other teams are as good as we think they are. So I'm not worried. I'm not worried about the Bucks, but if you wanted me to guess, are they going to go back to the finals or not? I would say no, just because there's so much competition in the Eastern Conference, not because anything negative I have to say about the Bucks.
Julian Edlow joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. He is the host of the Unreasonable Odds podcast, DraftKings content specialist, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. Julian, one more before I let you go. Back out west, we mentioned the Warriors and the Suns. They're the 2 hottest teams in the league right now. But we mentioned after them, the West has this drop-off of the teams after them, whether it's the Mavs or the Clippers or the Jazz or even the Timberwolves or Lakers. What is the team that is behind the Warriors and Suns right now that you think is best equipped to threaten them later this season?
I mean, I think that's an easy answer, and they've looked awful, and it's the Lakers. Personally, it doesn't have the feel of something that they're going to get together. But they have LeBron. And they have Anthony Davis. So when playoff time arrives, and I do think they will be there in the playoffs, we're saying, are they going to make it or not? They'll make it. When that time comes, if the standings were as they were now, the 7 seed Lakers would take on the number 2 Suns, who beat them in the playoffs last year after Anthony Davis got hurt and with a banged up LeBron, and the Lakers would have revenge on their minds there. It would not surprise me or anyone in the slightest bit if the Lakers beat the Suns in a playoff series. In fact, if we were setting odds on it, the Lakers might be favored in a series, as they were last year. So I think it's just, we know how talent plays out in the NBA. So if the Lakers at any point in time figure it out, they're going to be extremely dangerous.
Give him a follow on Twitter at Julian Edlow. He's the host of the Unreasonable Odds podcast. Subscribe, download, give a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. I feel like Apple Podcasts is the only one that gives you the option, right?
I don't know which places give you the option, but it is on Apple, and you can go ahead and give it 5 stars there. We're on Spotify. We're on YouTube.
See, I got Spotify.
I don't know about.
See, I got Spotify, but they don't give you the option to rate and review. It's just you're either subscribed or you're not, kind of thing.
All right, well, hit subscribe on Spotify. Unreasonable Odds. There we go. Follow us on Twitter at Unreasonable Odd. We ran out of room and we couldn't put the S in.
That's your story and you're sticking to it, right?
That's my story and I'm sticking to it. I didn't make it. The social media team did. That's what they told me, and I believe them. They're good people.
Julian, appreciate you jumping on. It's been a while since we chat. Hope we talk again soon.
For sure. Anytime, Josh.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night 97.3 ESPN. We'll get you guys' thoughts and comments. See some texts coming in about a couple of different things, especially the Sixers. Markelle Fultz on the text board. So we'll get to that in just a bit as well. On the other side, text board is 609-403-0973. You can DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And of course, we are live on YouTube at 973 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig at Josh Hennig on Twitter. And this is Game Night.
It's Sixers basketball tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McGinnis, calling all the exciting play-by-play action.
Shot clock at 8. Now it's Embiid on a drive in the lane. This time he hammers it in. Joel Embiid for the left side, and now he turns to the crowd and says, "Let me hear you."
The Sixers are in Boston to take on the Celtics. Coverage begins at 7:30. Philadelphia 76ers basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN.
It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan.
It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan. You asked for it, and Matt Blatt Nissan has agreed. AJ the Trademan has extended the sale because used vehicles are still at an all-time high. So drive directly to Matt Blatt Nissan, and AJ will give you top dollar for your trade or even pay you cash on the spot. So cancel that service appointment. Don't even wash it because Matt Blatt Nissan needs your trade. Stuck in a loan or lease? We will get you released. The value of your current vehicle has skyrocketed. So cash in your vehicle now and drive home in a new Nissan today with 0 down, 0% APR financing for up to 36 months on all new new Nissans in stock. You may get more cash than you think and drive away with peace of mind because only Matt Blatt Nissan has a 4-day love it or leave it return policy. Matt Blatt Nissan. Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR financing based on $27.77 per thousand borrowed. Offers can't be combined. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 12/5/2021. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Game Night being brought to you by my friends over at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Dallas Hotel Casino in Atlantic City. This holiday season is in full swing. Thanksgiving is done. Black Friday's in the rearview mirror. Christmas is weeks away, and you can still catch all of the NFL, NBA, college football, college basketball action at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Dallas Hotel Casino in Atlantic City. It's time to experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get in on all the games you love at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Dallas Hotel Casino off the boardwalk in Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Let's get to some of your guys' comments over there at the text board, 609-403-0973. Dan from EHC chimes in. Talked a little Sixers earlier. He says, taking Fultz instead of Tatum may be the worst draft pick in NBA history. Here's the problem. That's a little recency bias because people forget that Greg Oden was picked ahead of Kevin Durant. Right? That to me is just horrible. I remember back to the Kwame Brown draft. 2 picks later was Pau Gasol. And I think Pau Gasol, we all agree, is basically a basketball Hall of Famer, NBA champion, an amazing career. And Kwame Brown, he just stunk, and that was the guy that, remember, Michael Jordan was like, we got to draft this guy. I'm running the Wizards here kind of thing. Maybe not on the same level. Michael Olowokandi, that was at the 98 draft. And the 5th pick was Vince Carter. So, we can go through every draft and be like, this guy went number 1 and, they should have picked this guy, right? Obviously, the year that Giannis was drafted, right? Giannis he didn't even go in the top 10. Giannis the 15th pick overall in that draft. The number 1 pick was Anthony Bennett. Number 2 was Victor Oladipo. Number 3 was Otto Porter. Number 4 was Cody Zeller. Number 5 was Alex Len. Number 6 was Nerlens Noel. I mean, that draft had a ton of dudes who were like either injuries derailed their entire career or they were just nobodies. And it's like Giannis is a superstar legend at this point. So, when we sit here and say stuff like taking Fultz out of Tatum was the worst, but it really wasn't. At the time, it made sense. The Sixers needed a combo guard to play adjacent to Ben Simmons. They needed a guy who was in that, I can spread the floor as a shooter, I can take the ball to basket to be a scorer that Markelle Fultz was. They needed that kind of player. They didn't know when they drafted him that he was going to turn out the way he did with all the shoulder problems and everything else that's going on. And now he's returning from a knee injury. Nobody knew any of that stuff was going to happen. He was supposed to be something based on what he did in college. I understand that the gut instinct is to say, well, Tatum's a better player. Well, that Tatum's a better player. All right. Tatum's a 2-time All-Star. He's 23 years old. He's basically a perennial All-Star at this point. He's going to make some more All-NBA teams. The problem is that when you say stuff like it's the worst, we forget who actually was the worst. To me, I'll never forget Greg Oden over Kevin Durant. Okay. I remember that draft. That draft was just so bad that, we were told Portland doesn't need another scorer, right? They had Brandon Roy at the time. Durant goes to Seattle later, OKC. The rest is history. Greg Oden washes out. I mentioned Michael Olowokandi won Vince Carter 5, Sam Bowie picked ahead of Michael Jordan 1983. Kwame Brown instead of Pau Gasol. Now, I will say, I don't want to be revisionist history here. The reason why Pau Gasol didn't go number 1 was 2 reasons. One, because the Wizards and Michael Jordan really thought that Kwame Brown could be something. They saw something special in him. And number 2, there were questions if Gasol was going to leave Europe and come to the United States. And part of the reason why the Grizzlies got their hands on him was because of the fact that people forget that, like I said, Gasol was a guy that people didn't know if he was actually going to come to America immediately. And then when he decided to come to America, it was, all right, well, we don't know who this guy is because he doesn't fit the Dirk mold. He doesn't fit the Arvydas Sabonis role. They didn't really know what he was, honestly, when he first came to America. So, I don't like to be revisionist history. Fultz at the time seemed to make a ton of sense. Now, again, history is going to rewrite that Fultz was a bust. It didn't work out. And listen, it's not going to work out. And I don't even know what his career is going to be at this point. I know some people say that time will tell about his career. Look, he's busted his shoulder. He's busted his knee. I understand guys come back from injuries, but having 2 serious injuries in the first few years of your career is a pretty bad omen at this point, okay? But if we had to have a conversation about who's worse, Markelle Fultz, Greg Oden, Kwame Brown, Michael Olowokandi, all first overall, who's worse? I feel like that the argument could be made one way or the other. Over on the text board at 609-403-0973, Tom from Margate, also as he calls it, Margation Nation. Tom, always appreciate you chiming in. He chimed in, can you give a share update on what's up with the Phillies? What's up with the Phillies is I have no idea. And I don't think anybody knows. Joey Wendell is just traded, but not to the Phillies. So, look, I told Mike Gill this earlier. Some people may disagree with me, but at this point, it seems like there's going to be a lockout. All the reports are out there right now that Major League Baseball is trying to avoid a lockout. And part of the reason why there's been this crazy spending spree is because the anticipation is that tomorrow at midnight, there's going to be a lockout until the owners and the players come to some sort of agreement. They've been trying to meet throughout today to maybe something happen, right? So we're in a situation where the Phillies, in my perspective, are missing out on the boat. There's deals happening left and right now. There were rumors they were in on Nick Castellanos. There was rumors that they were, potentially on the heels of a bunch of different players. Chris Bryant obviously is a big name because of the fact that him and Bryce Harper are friends. I know that Kyle Schwarber has been talked about, but as of right now, the Phillies actually haven't signed anybody. They actually, aside from Sir Anthony Dominguez. Look, it's getting annoying for me, honestly. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you guys. I feel like you have a guy in Dombrowski who has a history of not being afraid to make moves. He's always been a kind of guy that, to me, would have gone out and got a Joey Wendell, right? Joey Wendell gets acquired by the Marlins from the Rays. You telling me Joey Wendell could have made some sense with the Phillies? I understand that you assume that you're going to be able to get somebody else, but you look at all the moves that already been made. I don't like it. Listen, I never thought Max Scherzer was going to go to the Mets. I mean, that just shocked me. You know, I keep hearing Kyle Schwarber. I keep hearing Chris Bryant. Well, what's holding the deal up? Again, I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy, but I'm just keeping it real with you guys. I look at the Phillies and I see a team that I think got caught between a rock and a hard place. And they see that the deadline is coming when it comes to that lockout. And I feel like they're sweating their palms a little too much. They just can't pull the trigger. They just can't get the deal done. And it's a bad look. Now, if they walk away from this offseason with Chris Bryant, I will be thrilled. That doesn't fix the bullpen. So we'll see what happens. But it looks like more and more that you're going to have a lockout tomorrow night. And that'll put the whole baseball offseason on ice. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night. I'll get you all tomorrow right here on 97.3 ESPN.
The Philadelphia Eagles play on 97.3 ESPN FM. This Eagles season, listen to every game with the voice of the Eagles, Merrill Reese and Mike Quick. Your official home for Eagles football in South Jersey is 97.3 ESPN FM. Brought to you locally by
Boardwalk Honda. From Maine to Miami, nobody beats a Boardwalk deal. Online, boardwalkhonda.com. Caesars. Come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long at the Wild Wild West, Tropicana, and Harrah's Resort Atlantic City. Jim Malamut at Green Tree Mortgage, your best play to refinance today. The Piccadilly Inn on Route 206 in Chemung, home of South Jersey's best wings. The DraftKings Sportsbook in partnership with Resorts Casino Hotel. Visit resortsac.com and EMP Solar and Roofing and Solar Guardians. Start your solar journey today by visiting espnsolar.com.
O'Reilly.
This is Claudia's O'Reilly.